everybody, welcome to Games Workshop or Games Tavern Happy Hour. Sorry, yeah, I was working on other stuff a minute ago.
Have we been upgraded, Mac?
Yeah, I wish. No, Games Tavern Happy Hour. Great intro, Rob. Why don't you kick us off? What are we talking about today?
Hi, I'm Rob, and Mac and I today are going to be talking about published adventures versus homebrewing adventures.
Yeah, so it's going to be looking at when you are getting ready to start a game as a prospective game master or dungeon master or whatever your system's judge of choice is. Do you want to go to the store, buy a book that is a pre-written campaign, or do you want to work on one yourself? There's a lot of great options out there for both of them. We're going to try and highlight a little bit of that and show you how we make those decisions ourselves. So, like we were talking about, there are there's two main types to be doing this. There's the write your own campaign, frequently called homebrew, and that gives you total freedom. You can do whatever it is you want to do, go wherever it is you want to do, and sort of tie in all of the things you want to tie in. There's a lot of really great stuff there, and some really popular campaigns and big things have come out and that have eventually gotten fully published. I think the biggest one recently is going to be the Critical Role thing, the Explorers of Wildmount. That started just as a homebrew that they were working on there.
Yep.
And then yeah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in here and say that no judgment. Both methods of adventure planning, campaign planning are valid. And the most important thing to remember is that no matter how well you plan, your players will find some way to pull you off the rails.
Yeah, that's always a thing. Going off book is a problem, whether or not, or not a problem. It's a thing, whether or not you've purchased an actual book or you're winging it and you have an idea where you want to go, and the adventurers are like, no, we're gonna go over there and talk to Boblin the Goblin. It's gonna be great.
Yep. Well, I mean, it is going to be great for them, not necessarily for you, because now you got to figure out who Boblin the Goblin is, what his motivations are, what his quirks are, and
Yeah, there's a lot
whether
of work.
Boblin the Goblin is going to stick around. Yeah, there's a lot of work.
Yeah, so there's so the yeah there man, I'm just all over the place today. So yeah, there's the homebrew stuff where you make up the entire campaign yourself. Then there's kind of the opposite side of that coin, which is the adventure path, published adventures. There's a lot of different terms for it, but we're just going to go published adventures for this one,
Yeah.
where you buy one of the books. As you can see on my shelf back there, yeah, there.
Hmm.
I have a whole bunch of books. All of them are most of them are D&D books, and in there starts of the Waterdeep campaign. I'm currently running some of the stuff out of the what is it? The Tales from the Yawning Portal. We're doing the Tomb of Horrors this Saturday. Check us out.
Yep.
And yeah, plug-in. So there's a lot of great stuff back there, and it's great. I love it. It doesn't necessarily save you a whole lot of time because you're going to be putting a lot of work into it as a game master anyway. But it does sort of get you up to speed a little bit faster and lets you put a little more polish onto things if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this. Why don't we?
So there are several systems that have a very large amount of published adventures, adventure paths, published campaigns. The foremost of which, of course, is D&D, being the big daddy, having 45 years of adventure publishing now.
It might be
Give or
46
take.
now. I'm not sure when they started in that year, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a while.
Yep. So there's a ton, so many, and now of course you have a whole lot that were published for Pathfinder, and Pathfinder 2 is now getting its first adventures as well. And then you have a whole bunch of other D&D alike fantasy games that do get published adventures, including one of my absolute favorites, 13th
Ooh,
Age, Eyes of the Stone Thief. This is a very thick book, as you can see, and that is because it is an adventure module campaign guide that is designed to take your characters from first level all the way up to level cap, if you want to do that. It can also be played piecemeal. It's built very flexibly, which is why it's one of my favorite ones. And there are a lot that are written at that level of quality. for D&D, at least one for Pathfinder that I'm aware of. But a lot of them are written as one-offs or
Smaller
one-offs
campaigns, yeah.
that lead to another one and maybe another one, and that's it. It's an adventure arc rather than an entire campaign, but there are some published campaigns.
That will run you up to 20. Yeah.
Right, yes, that there's one for Pathfinder that I know of, and I think there's two now for D&D. If you follow the entire
Yeah.
Delver arc, I think it goes to 15th now.
Something like that. Well, if you do
Yeah.
all of the, if you run Tales of the Yawning Portal as a campaign, in
Yeah.
theory, it'll get you to like 16 or 17.
Yep.
But that's really generous considering the last one is Tomb of Horrors, and it'll just murder you.
I mean, yeah. Again, this comes down to like you as a GM have to decide what you want to do with it.
Mhm.
If you want Tomb of Horrors to kill your entire party that has just worked their ass off to get to level 16, you do you.
Yeah.
Um, maybe you want to tone down the lethality of the final encounter. Maybe you want to be a bit more hint happy than you might normally be.
Yeah, that is all stuff to keep in mind. But one of the things that is actual sort of really worthwhile, it's sort of where we was dancing around that is when you're picking between a homebrew or a purchased campaign. I think one of the big key decisions is what story is it that you want to tell. What is it that you are looking for? Because until I want to say until pretty recently, there if you wanted to play say Pathfinder before the playtest campaign came out, if you wanted to do a political intrigue like the courtiers trying to get the king's ear and doing all that, there wasn't really a whole lot of options for you there. But then they finally dropped one, and it got mixed reviews because it was that as opposed to a dungeon crawl or a traditional adventure.
Well, and in a game that's not really built with robust social mechanics, it's hard to really build a great adventure around being at court. You have to build an adventure at court that involves the things that the system is strong at.
Absolutely. But so there are ways to get different. If there's a system that you have and you don't want to try and convert another system or another system's rules or scenarios into the system you're playing, if it doesn't have what it is that you're looking for, that's where homebrew I think really steps into its own. I've run quite a few homebrew games in both D&D and for Dungeon Crawl Classics on the stream here, and I think they're a lot of fun. I really like doing that.
Um, if you are going to homebrew, and by homebrew we're talking here about designing your own adventures, designing your own adventure arcs, designing your own campaigns. And when we say design, we're not talking about you're writing a novel, because that's not what you're trying to do. You're writing the outline for a novel. You're saying that these are the things that are going to happen in sequence as the players interact with the world. And if the players are doing things correctly, they'll be in a position to make positive changes. And if they're not doing things correctly, bad things happen in the background. That's very important, that just because your players are off rescuing the Princess of Monsoon for some reason doesn't mean that the kingdom of Volcano is not going to explode.
Sure, yeah, that's that's not a bad way to put it. Uh, so yeah, so what are some of the reasons why you would if you were starting to run something right now, what is what are some of the factors that would go into you deciding whether or not you wanted to run a homebrew campaign or a pre-purchase?
Uh, Comfort level with the group is a big one. If I've played with the group before and I understand them and how they fit as a group, interact as a group, what their likely roles are going to be, and what their interests are. Really big deal is knowing the interests of your players. Like if you have a player that really wants, serious intrigue sequences, wants to do spy stuff, wants to play Varys, essentially, you need to make sure that you're putting together a campaign that is going to cater to that desire. Um, and as Mac noted, there aren't a lot of off-the-shelf adventures that are aimed at running a spy network. It's just
Yeah.
not something that lends itself well to that format of writing. Um, which means that you have to study up and get comfortable with the setting. You know, if you're working in an established setting, you have to know enough about that setting to design a probable intrigue, at least to get things rolling. After which, usually players can create intrigue all on their own.
Yeah.
Right. Players are great at doing your work for you if you give them a push in the right direction.
Yeah, you got to throw enough tools and materials into the box and then shake it up with them inside, and then they'll start building a house for you. Uh, but the important part is getting enough stuff in there and gelling the group. Now, Josh is actually bringing up a whole bunch of really good points on here, where not every system is actually designed for really long campaigns.
Yep.
A lot of them are only going to get you through a few levels, if there's even a level system. A lot of them are going to last for a few sessions, if not one session. I've been in a whole bunch of really good one-shot campaigns or one-shot game sessions that have worked really, really well. Fate's one of those that it just I'm not sure I'd want to play a Fate campaign. But
I have, and I will tell you that Fate campaigns are great on the proviso that you don't expect character development to be a heavy part of your campaign. It's really about exploring a story rather than character improvement.
yeah, that's so knowing what it is that you're trying to go with. If, for instance, I just wanted to do a one-shot adventure, and I didn't own Tales from the Yawning Portal, well, all right, well, I'm gonna have to probably build a dungeon myself, just because I don't have readily available in my house a pre-written dungeon for the system that we're playing today.
Yeah.
If I
Josh
want,
again,
yeah,
Josh again, once again hitting the important points here. Josh, you're 100% right about that. Stealing from history is great, but we've got a ton of people, a ton of professional authors who've gone ahead and already stolen from history for us. We can just steal their work.
yeah, that's very fair. And
I ran a 13th Age campaign that my players did not realize was the Lord of the Rings trilogy done backwards.
so
Didn't realize.
you start by reaching into the volcano and pulling out a piece of jewelry.
Yeah, well,
Ah!
it wasn't quite that punch you in the face with the reality of it, but it started with a huge battle and the death of the king of the major civilization, and then worked its way back from there.
Okay, sure, yeah,
So,
that could really work.
yep, yeah, no. Again, someone has already done the hard work. Thank you, J.R. Tolkien. I'm just stealing pieces of his work and disguising it enough that it's not obvious, hopefully not obvious to my players that I'm just stealing that. But I mean, I've also run a session of Shadowrun that was literally just Chinatown. It was Chinatown from start to finish.
Wouldn't that just be Blade Runner at that point?
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was literally the
Just the
beat for
plot of
beat. It was the
Chinatown.
plot of Chinatown.
Okay.
You know, which again, if you're comfortable, if you know stuff, like I love noir movies, so Chinatown is one of my favorites, as is everybody else's.
I don't know
I'm
if a lot of people actually know
comfortable.
what Chinatown is. I think that might be a missing link for a lot of people's
Yeah.
movie filmography.
Yes, yeah. Do young people watch old movies? I do. Casablanca is my favorite movie. Um, I'm probably weird that way.
Yeah. Like I enjoy Casablanca. I wouldn't put we've gotten way off the rails here. Let's
But we're talking about homebrew. Where do you go to get inspiration from
right.
homebrew? And old movies is a great one because, as Josh noted, young people don't watch them all that often.
That is true.
So if you could run the Maltese Falcon as a gumshoe game, you could run, as I pointed out, you can run Chinatown as well,
Anything
actually
really.
probably several sessions of Shadowrun, but yeah, pretty much anything.
God, I hate
Oh
you.
yes, God, Reed. You know what? I'm just gonna make you watch it. I'm just gonna make you watch it.
But yeah,
I'm
that does
sorry.
bring up a lot of really good points on there. The inspiration that we use for playing a homebrew, if there's a certain flavor or a certain feel you want to have for your game, a lot of that can be lost when you're playing someone else's baby.
Yeah.
If you're the writer and the executor of this adventure, you can you can lean as heavily or not as heavily as you want into any of the any of the tone or any of the various subtleties that you really want to, and you can have it just be laced with as many different clues as you want. if you're playing off of someone else's written adventure, you're gonna have to be like stapling the parts to that, or you're gonna have to work and rejigger the entire thing to try and get it to do the very nuanced stuff you want to do. So it does depend on the amount of work you want to do to make an adventure yours, and it
Yep.
also depends on how subtle or how very specific the thing is you want to do. If I just want to run a standard sword and sorcery campaign, there's a million of those out there. I can do that. I tend to just write those myself because I want it to be my campaign.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of ways to do that. But why would you think about going with a here we go. Reed's actually come up with a good. Do you ever reskin adventures? Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I've done
yeah.
that with. I did that once with Starfinder when that didn't work out too well, but that was because I didn't really know the system as much. But there's been some good stuff coming out of it recently, I believe, that I need to get back and go into. I've done it with 3.5, 4, 5e, Pathfinder. I've done it for a lot of stuff where you just take an adventure that you like and you sort of change it enough to make it something else, or you do what you did with Chinatown into Shadowrun, and you slap a what is it, cyberpunk is there the
Yep.
term?
Cyberpunk aesthetic
Yeah,
and elves in the casino. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You just turn it
Yeah.
into that Netflix Bright movie. Yeah.
I mean, no offense meant to Max Landis, but I'm pretty sure I can write a better movie than he can.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. That was not a great adaptation of anything.
All right. But yeah, reskinning an adventure is yeah. Just drag everything to a screeching halt there, Rob.
Sorry.
But yeah, being able to draw that's really goes back to the inspiration front there, where I know I have a million great stories that I want to do. If I was running if I was running Mutant Crawl Classics back there, I'd
Hmm.
probably be quoting a lot of Douglas Adams. I might not be doing it verbatim, but you would absolutely be seeing towels next to weird post-apocalyptic glass tablet things. It's like, oh, it's the Hitchhiker. Yeah, I get it. Okay, we can do this.
Yep.
So there's a lot of really cool ways that you can grab the inspiration you want from other media that you love, and throw that in as a dungeon master, as a games master. You have the opportunity to do that, and
Yeah.
your players aren't allowed to say anything about it. So
I'm pretty sure it was Max Landis that wrote Bright. Yes.
wait, stop that. We're not a movie review club. We can be.
So fine. Well, I mean, we're talking about inspiration again,
Yeah.
and films are cinematic. They're action oriented. They're focused. They're built around set pieces. All the things that you as a GM want to do when you're designing an adventure has already been done in the production of a movie.
On that
Um,
front, if you guys
yeah.
are looking for inspiration, if you're looking for, you somehow have a lot of time to watch movies for some reason, go and dig into old schlocky fantasy movies.
Just watch Christopher Lee's filmography.
Well, yeah, but that's for a completely different reason. That's just because he's
Right.
fantastic.
You want to watch a master work.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But the other part of it is that um, he made so many movies. Many of them were very schlocky
Mhm.
vampire films
Yeah.
and horror movies. Um, but the key component to all of these is that every movie tells a story, and you can just steal either the entire story if you think it's good, or pieces of the story, and all of a sudden you've got the seeds of an adventure.
Yeah. Stealing the MacGuffin from random film no one else has seen, number four. Yeah, that's great. You need something to motivate your players to go do a thing. So, oh, it's the magic sword that when you twist the handle right way, two extra blades shoot off. And I don't remember what movie that was, but Kroll? Was that Kroll?
That was Crawl.
Yeah. Can I define MacGuffin? Yeah, it's you can go get in a drive through. It's like a type of bird, I think. Uh,
So so we can go super deep on stuff like MacGuffin or set piece but I feel like that's probably an entire different episode where
yeah,
we break down film terms that you're going to use when gaming.
sure. Well, no, he actually does have a point there. MacGuffin is the magical thing that you need to get for some reason. Other words to call it are the unobtainium, the plot device, the thing that it's like, oh, what do you need to do? Rich guy A is paying me to go get item C and bring it back to him. Item C is the MacGuffin. It doesn't actually matter. It's the thing that exists to move the story along.
And Mac has
Sometime,
just generated an entire adventure right there with that
yeah,
one sentence.
The Sword and the Sorcerer was the movie. There we go. Yeah, uh, yeah, yeah. That's that. But the old Excalibur movie with Patrick Stewart in there. Oh my god! And Liam Neeson was in that. Great
Helen
movie.
Mirren was in it.
Helen Mirren was in that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, go watch that. Everybody, just go watch that when we're done here. It's a
Yeah,
great movie. That era of fantasy film is fantastic. The old Conan movies are great. If you're doing sci-fi, watch any of the
the original Dune.
the yeah, original Dune is great. Flash Gordon, if you like that kind of pulpy sci-fi, all of
Yep.
these kinds of things, the movies that you love, like I would probably not run anything based off of Game of Thrones or the Lord of the Rings movies, because everybody at my table has seen those, and they'll be like, "Oh, I see exactly what you're doing there," and I'm okay with
Right,
that. I can do that from my side of the screen, but it feels kind of cheaty to do that to me. It feels like I'm cheating them out of an aha moment, and I'm figuring this out. If I'm like, "Hey
yeah,
guys, tonight we're doing Lord of the Rings. It's gonna be great. Let's do this." Uh,
right. Yeah, there's levels of theft and levels of disguise of that theft. Like I said, I ran an entire campaign, Lord of the Rings, backwards, and it was not until I revealed at the end that my players figured out what had happened. They were like, "Wow! First of all, I
yeah.
hate you."
That's just a standard reaction around you, though. That's
Right, yeah. But secondly, that's really impressive because even though there were some pretty obvious signs in retrospect, during the course of the game, the way they were presented wasn't the same. So you can do that. I mean, if you literally want to put Conan's sword in a game and literally have a hero who is basically Conan, as long as you don't tell people it's Conan,
yeah. I'm a very big
they may
fan.
not make that connection. Yeah,
I'm a very big fan of in like sci-fi games or even in the Frozen in Time DCC one shot that we did. I'm a big fan of describing something through the eyes of somebody else, through the eyes of the characters, in a manner that if I were to like in the Frozen in Time, at one point they go through the time travelers trophy room and they find Robbie the robot from like the Lost in Space series.
right.
Yeah, like I didn't describe it as that. I described it as a suit of armor with like weird pincer, gauntlets and stuff like that. But it was Robbie the robot. And then once they figured that, out, I was like, oh yeah, that okay, I got you. Or there was an Enigma machine on one of the pedestals. Didn't describe it that way, but being able, I'm a huge fan of the that's what that is. So if you
Yep.
describe somebody who looks like Conan, but you don't use the words "looks like Conan" or "acts like Conan," you just go through his story arcs, you can have a lot of good stuff there. There was an old Saturday Night Live sketch, Lothar of the Hill People. It was Mike
Yes.
Myers right around, yeah, yeah, and he just stands on a slight rise. He Lothar, yeah. Don't do that, but you can have a
Unless
lot of
you're
fun stuff. Yeah,
playing it for laughs. If you're playing it for laughs, all the rules are out. You want people to recognize the connection, the XP,
yeah.
and be able to laugh with the joke. Um,
So looking at the chat there, look, Josh, I believe you were talking about tvtropes.com. I think that's what he was trying to go for there. And I like that website. That's fantastic because it does allow you to dig into. They've done a weird job like cataloging pop culture, I guess, and
yep.
go into all the shorthand that we've developed and you don't even recognize as existing until you see
So
behind the curtain.
I will tell you right now that if you've never been to TV Tropes before, and you don't currently have 4 or 5 hours to spare, don't go.
No, don't go.
It is a time suck, especially the first time or the second time or the third time you go. You'll find yourself going down the rabbit hole. Um, if you are taking the time to prepare a campaign, it might do well to go to TV Tropes and learn. Um, Staff chick is one of the big ones, and that is a recurring and very common trope in fantasy gaming.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that, and it's explained on the website for people who may not be aware of the history of the staff chick, and how that character is integral to the archetypes that we interact with when we're playing D&D or something like D&D.
Yeah, that actually does. That's a nice segue into, and this isn't a how to write your campaign episode. We'll have a bunch of small tips on that as we go along. We'll have something about that about just a whole episode on writing that in the future. But one of the big things you can do is actually study. Uh, humans tell stories in a predictable pattern. Humans like listening to stories in a certain way. That's why we have, I'm not a huge fan of the hero's journey, but
Ooh, if you're not a huge fan of the hero's journey, but you want to learn more about writing, um, Kafka was an English professor. For people that may not be aware of that,
yeah,
and
no,
he teaches a really, or at one time taught a really excellent course on the 7 formatted stories that humans are familiar with.
yeah, he
You can find
yeah.
that on YouTube and watch that and have your mind blown.
Yeah, so do your research on that. Look at the Kafkas. Look at Kafka's stuff. Look at there's a bunch of on YouTube. There's a million videos about the hero's journey. There's a million videos about just storytelling. Re-
Um,
Read those
I'm
or
with
watch
you.
those.
The hero's journey is an important touchstone, and understanding the hero's journey is important to understanding why we play the games that we play.
I don't
But
subscribe to it, but anytime you
yes,
watch a video about it, normally people are talking about why X thing happens or why Y thing happens. You don't need to have all what's 8 steps or something there, but you can have if you understand. Oh, these are the things that generally get the guy out of going out and doing a thing, and the hero then has to face these problems, and they get a mentor along the way, and they get triumphs and all that other stuff. Just anytime you're studying stories, you're going to fundamentally just start getting a better understanding of them, and then can start telling your own better stories.
yeah. So the I remember very vividly when I was much younger and I was still, going to school and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I happened to attend a guest lecture by a gentleman named Stephen King, and somebody asked him, uh, what is your advice if somebody wants to be a writer? And he said, my advice to someone who wants to be a writer is read.
Yeah,
Just keep reading. If you don't read and you're not reading, you're not growing as a writer.
yeah. You need to know. You need to pay attention to how the rest of everything else is going on. Besides just reading, you also need to just go out and write.
Hmm.
As with any time we're talking about playing Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or any role playing game or running a role playing game, you're not going to get better unless you steep yourself in this and you do it. The single biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody trying to run Dungeons and Dragons is to run Dungeons and Dragons. Your first sessions are going to be garbage. Like that's just the way that it works. It's going to be bad. You're going to talk to all your players and be like, yeah, hey, everyone more or less will still have a good time, but it's not going to do what you wanted it to do. But then your next session will be better, and the session after that will be even better. And before you know it, you're going to have everyone's going to be walking away getting exactly the stuff that they wanted. You got to go. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. You're going to fall over a couple times. Just
So I
you got
think
to do
I
it.
think it's also important to point out that is true no matter how much experience you have playing
Yep.
prior to running a game. Um, you may have played games for 15 years and you said, you know what, this year I'm going to make a change. I'm going to run a game. And 15 years of experience playing games, and you're still going to run a terrible first session. It's just how it goes.
Yeah, and
The
that's
key is the key is to play a first session with players who understand that this is the first time you're running the game, who
yeah,
are going to be gentle.
yeah, and that's everyone's here to have a good time. So have a good time. Get out there,
Yep.
run it, be like, man, that didn't work like I was hoping. But now I've learned quite a few things about that.
Um, we joke about this a lot in the Discord server, which is improvisation versus prepared. And we always joke that the secret to my success as the GM is that I'm never prepared and I'm always improvising,
Yeah,
which is ridiculous because nobody actually is good that way. Everybody has
I've
to do some level of preparation.
I've known a couple guys who have that.
But they're not doing no preparation because even though every session they come to sit down at, they're improvising. They have done very basic stuff, like they
Yeah,
have character cue cards or they have um, some sort of plot arc in the back of their mind that they're working people through.
yeah, or they have
There's
a setting
no
that they know about, and they're like, oh, if you go into
right,
this house, this is going to happen. You go to this house, a different story. That's
right.
that's a big thing. Uh,
Well, it's not even just internalized. The character cards are a huge one. The guy who ran the first games that I played in, Rich. Rich had character cards. That was the one thing he had, and everything else was, he was, seat of the pants. Everything's on fire. go go go. But he had character cards because he did not feel comfortable making up character personalities and traits and motivations
Yeah.
on the fly. So he just had these characters that he would just pull off of his stack of index cards, 3x5 index cards, and that was his prompt to himself for how that character was going to interact.
Yeah, that's having those kinds of grab bag things. I think are great. If you're going to be official doing any of the the official Dungeons and Dragons Fifth Edition stuff, they have monster cards, they have magic item cards, they have magic cards. So you can just be like, all right, just deal out a couple first level, second level, third level, however many, whatever level wizard it is that you're gonna have them fight or meet. You're like, oh, these are the cards that my wizard has. These are the spells that he has prepared. Perfect. Or these are the monsters they're going to fight. Oh, they're going to fight an owlbear. Let me hit my Rolodex. Pull it out. Ah, here we go. Owlbear. And you have the stats for it. You have all the rules for it. It's having grab bag stuff like that makes flying by the seat of your pants way easier.
Right. Again, it's not no preparation when you're going into an improvised session. And I'm telling you right now, no matter how much you prepare, you'll be going into an improvised session at some point because your players are like, oh, there's the wagon trail that we're supposed to follow. Off into the woods we go.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got to have a goblin camp encounter or something.
Yep.
It happens. But
Like
having
that's whether or
those
not you're
those
doing a
tools,
homebrew or a campaign
right?
or a purchased
Yeah,
campaign. Yeah.
yeah. Having those tools, those character cards, those NPC cards, those monster cards, even the encounter cards that D&D put out for 4th edition are all fantastic tools that take a lot of the pressure off you, so you only have to worry about making the story that is created by these cards cohesive for the players.
Yeah, and that's that kind of pressure there is kind of that that's one of the big differences I see in homebrew campaigns versus the published adventures. Is if I'm hosting a Monday night campaign, every Monday night I'm going to be doing something. Throughout the week, I'm still going to put in the same amount of hours into it, whether it's I'm writing the world in the case of a homebrew, or I'm polishing and studying the world that was already written by Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to, I'm still adding on or twisting or understanding and internalizing if they do this, I can do that. So it allows me to add a little bit more polish as opposed to actual world building, uh, which again just completely depends on what kind of game you're trying to run. But Josh, there is another great question. Do you choose a published campaign first and then find players, or have a group and then choose a published product to play? Yes.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes with an experienced GM. For someone who's just looking to get into GMing, then this is going to be their first time out. It's really important to have a better group than it is to have a prepared campaign,
Yeah.
or a prepared adventure. Having a group that you have some understanding of, ideally a group that you have played with before as a player, so you understand the foibles. Trust me, if you tell your GM, hey, I want to try my hand at running a game, your GM's gonna be like, so I get to play?
Weekend off.
Awesome.
Yeah.
you know
Well, on that front, you have a brand new GM. What would you recommend they? Someone comes to me and is like, "Hey, I'm going to run something. I've never run anything ever in the past. How would you recommend they proceed?" I have my answer. I
uh,
want to see if they match though.
yeah. It's going to depend on your group. If you know your group, and your group has a game that they're familiar with, comfortable with, and they all enjoy, for instance, if everybody seems to like Shadowrun, um, it's insane to tell somebody you should run Shadowrun first, but if that's what your group plays, what they're comfortable with, and what everyone wants to try uh, to let you run, then try.
Well,
You're
and
gonna
I'm talking
fail.
system. I mean, like between homebrew and published adventure, like which one of those two?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
first time out, publish adventure.
yeah. That's absolutely where I'm standing. For D&D or for fifth edition, run the starter box. Like that's
Mhm.
Lost Mines of Phandelver is a fantastic adventure. I've recently managed to convince my girlfriend to play, so I need to actually build a party for her. So that'll be fun. But I'm gonna run her through that. Uh,
Mhm.
but having a pre-written adventure helps you so much if you've never run a D&D campaign or DCC or Pathfinder or Starfinder or any of them. If you've never been a dungeon master or game master before, having a pre-written adventure I don't want to say it's like training wheels, but
It's not.
it gives you a guideline to go by. It gives you a roadmap so you don't have to build everything yourself, and
Well, remember,
that's helpful.
everything is about relieving pressure on you as the GM.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a prepared adventure, someone has already done all the hard work. The things like character cards, you're going to have characters. They're going to have encounters built in most cases. They're going to tell you what to expect to need when you're going through this part of the adventure with your players. And the best ones actually tell you, like, hey, this adventure goes best if you have these kinds of characters in the party.
Yeah. Well, what I love about like for until I actually started with the Games Tavern here, I was actually kind of I preferred to run published adventures because I like running milestone and I like not doing homework.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the math part of D&D is not my favorite thing in the world. So most published adventures actually tell you, oh, by the time they reach this town, they should be able to be at level 3, and by the time they reach this mountain, they'll be at level 4. And then you'd be like, oh, cool. So they do this, and I level them up. And then they say, oh, there's this many monsters there. If you've never written an encounter and you've always just run pre-written stuff, the encounter balancer stuff is just a lot of math. Like that's all it is, and it's
Yeah,
I
and,
feel
I
lied
mean,
to.
this comes down to, like, when we get into tips for GMs, we've talked about this. Like, encounter design is really one of the hardest things to learn, and it is definitely the hardest thing to master.
Absolutely.
Like, you will master voices, you'll master interesting characters, NPCs. You'll master, running intrigue sessions for your players before you master encounter building. It's just how it works. Encounter building is crazy hard to do, and just like everything else with GMing, you're going to fail the first time out. The first encounter that you design is going to go badly. Whether it goes badly in the favor of your party or against your party depends on which game you're playing,
Yeah.
and whether you're designing to be a hard or easy encounter. Generally speaking, easy encounters tend to end up much harder than you think they are, and hard encounters end up being a lot easier than you think they are.
Yeah, it's balance is very difficult to achieve if you don't know what you're doing, and so probably the hardest part of being a DM is just balancing your adventures. Pre-written adventures have that done, so you can focus on all of the role play side of the role playing game and getting everybody immersed in the world, as opposed to having to worry about the mechanics that make it move, worrying about the skeleton that's going to be there, unless you're fighting skeletons.
Right, right. So all of these qualifiers are great and wonderful and accurate and correct, as long as they work for you.
Yeah, and that's again the mantra of the show. We're
Mhm.
not right or wrong. We're just giving out advice on things that work for us. Your mileage will vary. Like not even your mileage may vary. What you get out of this is going to be different than what we get out of this, and everyone has to kind of find their own rhythm to march to on that.
Yep.
But one of the things that I really do like about published adventures, and I feel like we should have had a better script than this, but sorry, I'm all over the place today. One of the things I really do like about the published adventures is when I was getting ready to run Tomb of Horrors, there are a couple parts in there that have not aged well. It is very clearly a system that or a dungeon that was designed in the mid 70s by a couple dudes sitting in their basement. And I'm not going to spoil anything on this in case in case anybody
So
that's playing is there. But there's some things that are like, oh, this mechanic I don't like this. This is a
so
weird thing. And so I
so
just had to
not
go
to
through and
touch
change that.
specifically on that adventure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you know the one I'm
Um,
talking about, right?
yes.
Yeah.
When you are going back and looking at older materials, even stuff that has been, I guess, reclaimed is the way that I would look at the updates on the old traditional D&D
Mhm.
adventures for 5th edition. Um, some of the themes, some of the tones, and a lot of the characters are going to come across as out of time.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to be said for making your players aware of that before they get there. Um, it's a big deal for some people, and it is not a big deal at all for other people.
Yeah.
But for the people that it is a big deal for, just telling them, hey, just FYI, at some point in this game, your characters may stumble into a harem. It is what it is. Not making any statements either way, but it's part of the elements involved in the story. So
Yeah,
if you're
and
not comfortable with that,
you
we'll
can tone
we'll
it
try
back.
and mix it up.
You can
Yeah.
change it. One of the great things I like about this isn't a video game. This isn't a movie. It's not like, hey, let's go watch. We're gonna go watch the some risque-ish movie or a movie with risque scene with my parents, and it's like, oh, I had no options. This had to happen. It's like, no, I saw a trap in this game that did something that I realize a lot of people are uncomfortable with nowadays, and I just remove it. That's it. I changed the trap. I made it do what I want it to do now.
Yep.
You can do
But
that.
yeah, again, sometimes D&D does show its age.
Yep.
Spells like Control Person are huge, huge trigger issues for some players. Uh, whereas, or Crown of Iron, or the other ones, I can't remember their names. There's a whole bunch of them where you're essentially taking player agency for a moment. Uh, Sometimes one turn, sometimes 4 turns. Um, but when you take player agency away from your players, that can be a really big issue. So you need to talk to them about, hey, are you comfortable with agency being usurped for a few rounds, a turn? Like what's your hard limit on
Yeah.
feeling helpless?
But that's we're going to veer back into on topic abruptly. But yeah, it's when you're working with older material, really working with any of the material. If you know your audience, you know the people that you're playing with, you know the people who are going to be watching. Make sure that you do things that everyone there at the table is comfortable with, and I think
Yeah.
that's enough points on that. But where I was actually going with is when I ran into this trap that I hated. I went online and Googled, "Hey guys, what is everybody doing here? Because this is very clearly a 1975 trap. What is everyone else doing?" And they're like, "Oh, hey, here's I turned the trap off. I bricked up that thing. I made it so it wasn't there, ranging all the way to it does this other thing that's well within the world, and it's still a haha wacky moment, but it's no longer something that's gonna make everybody uncomfortable."
Hmm.
And even if it's even if I didn't have that problem, being able to go onto YouTube or Twitch or any website ever and Google or just search, how do I run Tomb of Horrors? You'll find a million playthroughs. You'll find a million GMs saying what we're saying here. We're like, oh, this is how I did it, and this is what I liked about it, and this is how you need to do it. So there's a lot of great stuff you can do there on the internet if you're running a pre-built campaign. If I'm like, how do I run my D&D adventure?
Uh,
I
Other
can't help you.
GMs, yeah, other GMs are a huge resource. Do
Yeah,
not be afraid to go on forums and ask stupid questions. Because I guarantee you, at some point or another, Mac and I had those stupid questions,
absolutely.
and we either asked them and learned the easy way, or we made the mistake and learned the hard way.
Well, if you had to find one resource on the internet to be able to, because I can't actually do it, because if I go onto the Discord, it'll kill us or kill you, remove you from the screen. If somebody would be ever so kind as to post the Discord link up on there, we have a great community there. You
Hmm.
can come on. Josh is there with all of his great stuff that he's been talking about in the chat. Josh D&D is one of our cast and crew. He's there. He can answer questions. We can answer questions. Everybody that is there it's a great community. If you have any questions about it, we have actually I think a thing called DM's Hidden Corner. It's not actually
Hmm.
hidden, but if you're not a DM, I don't know, and your DM's in there, don't go in there because you might get a hey, I need to surprise my players with this. And you're like, I saw a thing. But we have a bunch of great people on there that can give out great tips. So check us out. Link is now in the now in the chat. Join up. We'd love to hear the conversation with you guys. Josh again asking a great question. How do you keep track and organize the mythology and lore of your homebrew campaigns, notebooks, cool sites, apps? I'm analog. For me, as I reach over, uh, I have a notebook here. I have dungeons here. That's graph paper.
Hmm.
That's how I make my games. Uh, I know that that's
Um,
not cool anymore, but I don't feel like learning the internet anymore. I have 4 skills. I don't need a fifth. Uh, but there
I
are a
have
bunch of great sites out
Yeah,
there for that. Yeah.
I have plenty of 3 ring binders full of notes on campaign settings and characters and gods and the mythos and the mythological constructs and the cosmology of a world, because that's how it was done when we were young men. But I also have a lot of Google Docs and Google Sheets, and the there's a Google function that allows me to just doodle. That's been
Is
hugely
there?
valuable.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll check
yeah.
that out later.
Um, that has been hugely valuable because it allows me to take a map from Google Slides or whatever. So I have a Google slide in the Google of a map, and I can just import that and I can doodle on it. Um, again, these are all how do you manage an online group solution?
yeah, if you're talking online, that completely changes. I think we did an episode on that. That feels like something we did an episode
Yes,
on.
yes, you just did an episode on that. Um, but the flip side of that is that I always have access to Google Docs because I always have my phone with me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, so, worst case scenario is I'm reading my notes off my phone. Um, I read off my phone every day. Usually try not to read a lot off my phone, but having to read Google Docs off your phone is not the end of the world. It's not the greatest experience, Google, but it's also not terrible.
Yeah, there's something to be
Um,
said about having a digital compendium. Full disclosure, all of our show notes here are actually posted are on a shared website, so we
mhm.
can edit them back and forth, and they're all digital. I'm not going to bother putting this stuff down in my notebooks about things I care about. No,
Mhm.
that's not fair. This I can share. I can push it out. If I was doing this as a campaign of some kind, and everyone that's come on has been a player, I could push them notes. I could be like, hey, here's the world that you've been in. Here's some great information for you. Here's the notice that you ripped off the board. So you can do a lot of really good stuff on that. Just personally, I am far more comfortable. I don't want to say riffing, but do stream of consciousness into a notebook than I am on my computer. That's just
so
how I do.
so experienced GMs are going to feel more comfortable improvising in most cases. I will say that as an experienced GM who does a lot of improv, one of the things I've gotten more and more careful about is notes, taking notes.
Yeah.
And this just directly relates to Josh's question. I ran a mythology campaign with the Aesir and the Vanir, were the deities in the campaign world. Um, and I found very quickly that as the characters interacted with the Aesir and the Vanir, and in the background I have the Aesir and the Vanir interacting with each other in order to drive events, that if I did not take very careful notes on what the Aesir and the Vanir characters had done. So, I had notes on what Melee had done. I had notes on what Philly had done. I had notes on what Thor had done. I had notes on what Odin had done. I had notes on what Ron had done.
You're just
Um,
showing off that you know all the Norse gods.
I do not. I know about 7 or 8 of them, and there's like 34. Um,
I mean, yeah, Freya did have that cat chariot though, so that's yeah.
yeah, but if I didn't have those notes on what those characters had done, I would quickly quickly forget, and I would lose my own plot. Um, and my players would bring it up to me. They'd be like, Ron said this in the session 2 sessions ago, and then you'd go, crap, you're right. I'm sorry, I didn't remember that. Let me write it down.
Yeah.
You get good about taking notes, or you get caught by your players quite often with your mythology. I don't want to say screwed up, but screwed up.
Yeah, if you're gonna if you are going excuse me, if you're gonna have a recurring town or a recurring building that they're gonna be at for more than just sleeping here, uh, because if like for my homebrew campaign that I was running before we were no longer allowed to see each other again, uh, yeah, I built a town like 3 or 4 days east of Waterdeep, and it was there because I wanted to be there. I didn't want to deal with anybody who's like, oh, I know what actual things are. I'm like, I don't know this world, so we're just gonna do it here. So I built a
Oh,
town there, and I doodled it out, and it was a great town. I filled it out with a cast of characters, and I had to actually I have 3 or 4 pages of notes about this town.
mm-hmm.
90% of that the players never ran into, but it helped me to flesh it out. I'm like, oh hey, if someone is complaining about that farm over there, I know who lives at that farm. Or someone's complaining about the morning barkeep. Well, I know who the morning barkeep is, so yeah, I can talk about this thing or that thing. I know when this person would be. It was to a stupid degree, but you don't have to go that far. My favorite trick for that kind of thing is anytime is I keep a. And I know I've mentioned this several times. I have a list of all the major races that someone's going to run into. So elf, dwarf, human, halfling, gnome, more dwarfs, more dwarfs, more dwarfs, just because I like dwarf accents. Uh, I have a bunch of names, first names, last names, all separate columns by themselves. And I run into a family. Well, I'm going to pick the first three names and the next unused last name. All right, and boom, there we go. This is this group. Do a quick note about them, and boom, that's all. That's all I need to know. Because yeah, they're these people. They'll be tropes. I'm fine. But then I don't actually have to pre-generate characters. I just do, oh, hey, here we go. And I just have to make sure I'm keeping notes as I go, because otherwise, I'd be like, hey, what happened to Irvin Stonecutter? And they're like, who? Um, I don't know. He has died.
So this comes back to uh, improvisation versus preparation, and the whole. If you already have a 3x5 note card for a character, and all of a sudden that character becomes an important character in your town,
Put a
put
gold
the
star
name
in the
on
corner.
there. No, put the name on there, and then file it away in the town folder, because that is no longer a pre-generated character that you can just bring into the campaign.
Yeah.
It's now an established character.
Yeah, and that's this is all just tips that you can use for whether it's going to be a pre-written campaign or a homebrew. But
Yeah.
we've lost the
Again,
reservation
pre-written
again.
campaign. No. Pre-written campaigns should provide tools like these, um, in the sense that a pre-written campaign that has a town that it is centered around should have a town map and a list of important NPCs, and then hopefully some space in the margins for you to doodle in the rest of the
Mhm.
NPCs that you have to introduce to flesh out one of these towns.
Well, my
Um,
favorite when this was a word that I actually had to learn in D&D is denizen. Oh, that's a good word. But in best use of it was in somewhere back there. Was in Tales from the Yawning Portal is the tavern denizens, and it's just everybody you would run into in the tavern in the portal, or in the Yawning Portal, and it's great. Like I love that they have that, and then like and other people that could also be here are the brash adventurer, the shy barmaid, the this thing or that thing. It's like, oh, cool. They're just one shot, one sentences, but it helps to fill it out. And it's
yep.
and the trick there is you can actually take all that, change their names, and put them into your own tavern. Ooh, it's not
Or not
cheating if you
change,
don't get caught.
not change the names. Actually, that's fine too.
True. I think most of the characters in the Yawning Portal are pretty known. Like one of them was like L'Oreal Silverstar, I think, or Silverhost or whoever.
If you're not playing in Forgotten Realms, if
Then you
you're not
shouldn't use their
on
names anyway.
Faerun, you could just steal the names wholesale and put them in Dark Sun. Why not?
True, true. So yeah, let's. I think we've covered. Oh, here we go. One of the we haven't really run into this yet. We've been sort of up on both of them. Like, hey, here's why you should do homebrew. Here's why you should do published adventures.
Cons.
Cons, yeah. We're gonna get negative, guys. So let's do this.
Cons.
Uh, for one of the biggest downsides I have, we're gonna go straight out with published adventures. Is player is if I run a published adventure for a group of established players, they know what it is. Like if I want to run Curse of
Or
Strahd, everybody in my regular gaming group is more or less familiar with the Curse of Strahd. There's going to be no haha gotcha moments, and I like those. I like being able
I
to
will
jump
tell you
out.
that the last version of the Curse of Strahd that I have personally read through was the AD&D version. So
It is the spiritual successor of that. They are very very
I
similar.
know. I, I've heard great things, and like I said, I'm comfortable with the idea of
Yeah.
running Strahd because I have played through the Strahd adventure campaign a million years ago.
It was
It was
just
one of the
Ravenloft at that point. Come on.
no, there was the whole Strahd arc, but yeah, you were setting the setting was Ravenloft,
Yeah.
but it was Curse of Strahd. That was the main story.
Yeah. So,
Um,
but that's you get my point on that. That's one of my my big. It's not spoilers, but it's so much as I like to be able to have organic reactions at the table that aren't just that aren't someone humoring me. If that is
so there's a way to counter that particular con, and that is to subtly change things. For instance, if you run Curse of Strahd, where Strahd is for whatever reason not the big bad,
surprise, it's a
or
dragon.
Strahd, yeah, Strahd is a tool of a dragon or
Yeah.
a greater demiurge of darkness or whatever. that can be a fun twist for someone who is already familiar with Strahd and has already played through the Strahd campaign.
Yeah.
It changes it in a way that doesn't actually fundamentally change anything about the campaign.
It, it
Although
is an
it does
inter-
change, yeah, just
it,
change the character of Strahd a bit.
it is an interesting point that I'm probably a little too sensitive on this because I've played a couple campaigns multiple times, and each time with different DMs, and the highlights are the same, but every GM brings something new to the table that the other guy
Mhm.
didn't. Everybody has their own way of leaning into it that the other player doesn't really get it. Strahd is the villain. He's a big bad vampire. He lives in a giant castle. Shut up, Josh. God, someone mute that guy.
Yeah, what a jerk. Why would you say that?
He's a monster.
Yeah, as
Uh,
we know from the Universal Monsters universe, they're all terrible people.
yeah, right. Sympathetic bad guys. Pah. But anyway, so there goes all our followers. But the idea of just because the home or just because the campaign says it this way, it is that it's always going to be the same. It's not. Absolutely, like I can go through and I can play my favorite video game, any of those big RPG games a bunch of different ways, and the game itself is still the same. I have a completely different experience every time I play it. So I recognize I'm being a little paranoid on that front when I'm saying I don't particularly want to spoil my players. I want to have I want to have an unfettered experience and let everyone see it through virgin eyes. But that's just not the world we live in, and it's kind of impractical too. What's your least favorite thing about homebrew? Let's go ahead and go there and kick that can around a little bit.
Homebrew becomes work. I mean, it can become a full-time job. And
Yes.
by I mean it can become a full-time job. I mean, if you're playing a campaign and you're doing a lot of homebrew, it is a full-time job.
Yeah. There. If you meet once a week and you're doing 3 hours, 3 hour sessions, which seems to be about an average session, I can't sit for too much longer than 3 hour session. Maybe 4 hours if we're really going. But a 3 hour game night's about right. I'll
So
probably put anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours per hour of game time, just because that's where it goes.
my rule of thumb is that for every hour that you guys are playing a game together, the DM has probably done about an hour of prep work.
Oh, if not more, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I go more than that, but that's because I'm also still building my world and
Hmm.
all that. If I am writing, if I'm running something else, like with the Tomb of Horrors, I'm reading Tomb of Horrors and brushing up on trap rules. That's
Well,
not that much extra work.
encounters. I mean, we talked about how hard encounter design is. That's a huge part of the time investment in homebrew is
Yeah,
that you don't get. Well, I mean, life hack. You can just steal the encounters from published adventures and
hmm
put them into your homebrew.
yeah.
Um,
For what
that
it's
saves
worth, on
saves
the
you some work. Yeah.
on the encounter side, once you've figured out what and you've been around the block a few times, once you've figured out that 5 level 5 adventurers can handle 3 owlbears or 2 owlbears or whatever the magic number is there, you're like,
It's one hour round.
yeah, I don't know, whatever. Once you figured out what once you have your metric of, oh, this is how hard a fight can be here, and you stop worrying about making sure they get the exact specific XP that they need to do this, and you're just like, oh, I can rapidly bang together 15 goblins and a troll. Okay, and you can make that a thing that's bound. You do sort of start get your sea legs on that, so it does get easier, but it's
I
still time consuming, very
I,
very time
I will
consuming.
emphasize that one of the reasons that encounter design is so difficult is because like what is a comparative trap based encounter versus a comparative com based encounter.
Oh my god.
And right, right. This is one of those things. It's like, how hard does a trap have to be the same difficulty as a troll? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I think that that's one of those things that you have to get comfortable with. I don't want to say handling by the seat of your pants, but justifying
Yeah.
the fact that your 6 dart trap compound is the same difficulty level as a troll, not
Yeah.
because it's as lethal as a troll, unless your party is really bad at finding traps, but because it is the same amount of rolls, the same amount of time investment. and functionally the same amount of difficulty for the group to surpass as fighting a troll.
Yeah, well, one of the one of the problems I've had sometimes is being able to get, or not sometimes, always, is being able to gauge how long it's going to take the party to do or go through certain things. Like a few months ago,
Puzzles.
it wasn't even a puzzle. Like it was I
Oh
ran.
no, you didn't think it was a puzzle, but it was.
Yeah, I ran the thing on the Velkin Weave night where they were running through a dungeon to get something from like a Demi-Lich or something. It was
Mhm.
a very light version of Tomb of Horrors, effectively. And then I found out I could buy 5th edition Tomb of Horrors. I'm like, ah. And they had to go through like 5 rooms, and there was a pitfall, and they had to fight like a ghost and a Minotaur skeleton and a mimic or two. And then they fought the Lich, and there was a pile of owlbears. It was great. Everyone loved it. Uh, shut up. But
A pile of owlbears. That's
yeah,
very
right.
weird. What is
Uh,
the term for a group of owlbears? Is it a murder of owlbears?
yeah, it's a hoot. But anyway, there in one of the hallways, I had just put two things. It was literally just like the guy's decorations or his trophy room or something like that, like meaningless trinkets. And they took about an hour to get past these meaningless trinkets while my ghost and Minotaur skeleton like stood on the other side of the door waiting for them to come through. And I'm
Yep.
like, all right, finally, yeah, you guys spent so long, you get, I don't know, endless water. Enjoy. You win. Fine. But it was literally supposed to be like they walk through and be like, oh hey, check it out. There's a vase and there's a
Yeah.
trophy.
But
Ooh.
so again, this comes down to set piece design. And one of the fun things about pre-written adventures is if you happen to have a published adventure that you're playing through that for some reason nobody in your group is familiar with and has never seen before, and you run into something that should be a simple 15-minute puzzle, and you don't give them the right clue, you suddenly burned 45 minutes, maybe even an hour and a half on
Yeah.
square peg goes into square hole. I mean, it happens. So not just you, but people who actually get paid to do encounter design make mistakes. It
Yeah.
happens.
That's but it's a thing that happens. One of the other problems I can have with published adventures is if I want to have that flexibility. If I'm doing, as opposed to being like, hey guys, we are going to run through Curse of Strahd, brace yourselves, this is what we're doing. But it's instead everyone's like, hey, I want to do Dungeons and Dragons tonight, for the next 6 months. Will you run something for us? And I pick without, or I pick and they're like, yeah, that sounds fine. Let's do sure Curse of Strahd. Why not? And they aren't really biting. They're not on board, or they want to go off and do something with some other small part of thing that doesn't move the plot forward or has nothing to do with the main overall goal. Trying to get them back on book or trying to fill out the world with things that give them something to do can be a little constraining if I'm already really excited about the big bad thing in that castle over there, and they're just like, ooh, caravans.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's another good point is that even if you're going in with a published adventure, you are almost certainly not getting out of the game with a published adventure
Yeah,
because every group is going to approach things differently, especially based on the GM. Just the only difference being a GM can produce a completely different result for an adventure. Um, it is wonderful and weird, and it makes tabletop games almost endlessly replayable. Although, as Mac points out, that if you've played through a game, for instance, Lost Mines of Phandelver, several times, you kind of know what the beats are. You know where the climax is. You understand when you've moved past active, difficult scenes and set pieces, and you're into the denouement of the story.
yeah,
Like those are problems, but only if you let them be problems. If you're just comfortable going along with the adventure, and this came up a couple of times um, with our group. Some of us have played through some of the adventures that Reed is adapting. Um, Even though Reed is very good at hiding that he's adapting adventures, sometimes uh, I've played through Keep on the Borderlands several times.
don't tell them that. Yeah,
Um,
that's
but but the other part of this is like I know this as a player, but my character only knows what my character knows, and you'll see me ask this question. Yeah, would Rafe know anything about this? And that's the important thing is if you as a player, don't know whether your character would know something about. Ask the DM.
Yeah.
They're either going to say make a roll, or they're going to say, yeah, absolutely, your character would know about that because reasons.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got on this handy dandy show notes here. Actually, first, I'm going to go ahead and kick it out to the chat out there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys? Is there anything about homebrew or published adventures that you're particularly fond of? A reason why you prefer one or the other, or a
Well,
reason why you don't like doing one or the other? Let us know. You have the chat. We'll keep rambling at ourselves here, but we'd love to hear what you guys have to think.
yeah. Josh brings up a good point. Is like if your DM decides to stop DMing, effectively the world that they've crafted for you is, I don't want to say dead, but
Gone.
gone.
Yeah.
Unless you get permission or you decide that you're just going to steal his work and move on and do your own stuff. And I've seen that happen. One of my buddies in high school designed a campaign setting, and he got tired of running games, which happens. Burnout, by the way, also is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
He turned over all of his notes, a huge 3-ring notebook full of graph paper and your standard ruled paper with notes on the setting, the characters, the places, even some adventures that were sketched out that he never got to run. And he handed off to another guy, and that guy ran that campaign setting for about a year before the other guy said, "You know what? I'm feeling refreshed. I'm feeling inspired. I want to run again." You know, it happens.
Yeah, it's we're players too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Josh does bring up some cool points. Again, I mean, that feels like the theme of the night. Josh says cool stuff. Organized play. Organized play has a lot of really good options there because if you're going and doing Adventurers League, you're not really reliant on your favorite GM. You might really like that guy or lady,
Mm-hmm.
but if they're not there, all of the pre-written modules that they're running off of are for the most part available. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can go to your next game store and go there and play with them. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, Storm King's Thunder has some bold story ideas and fleshing those out more fully. Yeah, the hybriding up with different types of taking. Well, I mean, you have to do writing no matter what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing in a pre-written campaign, you still have to do some writing. If you're doing writing your own campaign, surprise, you have to do some writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gaps come up all the time. You may have the players finish the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and instead of going back to, I can't remember the name of the town now, they decide they want to go to a different town.
Yeah.
Well, you are all of a sudden on the spot to either pick a different town that is nearby. So if you know the setting well enough, you may be able to pick one, or say you wander into the village of Thorpe, and now you got to figure out what's going on in Thorpe.
Yeah. Or just a rock slide. You have to go back to the other town. Congratulations, railroad.
Right. Yes. Yeah. the forever GM tool of choice. Rocks fall from the sky. You have to go back to where I want you.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's like when kobolds come out with like sticks of lightning. Okay, yeah, fine, I'll go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we've covered one of the points that I completely forgot to bring out, and I'm willing to say that yep, it's right there in the chat. Josh said it. Homebrew's free. For I know a lot of players, especially when you're just getting started. You might be a high school kid. You don't have a whole lot of money. So buying the starter box or the Dungeon Master, everyone goes in on the Dungeon Master's Guide, the PHP, and the Monster Manual, and you hand it to your friend who's the best with math, and you're like, hey, make fun happen. You guys might not have the $40 to to buy one of the adventure paths, and you have to do it by yourself. There are some other options though, if you are looking for cheap as free or very cheap free stuff. Yep. Josh is teeing up all the great stuff. We're gonna have to get you on here, Josh. It's just way easier.
Josh just pointed out free material. Wizards of the Coast offers actually now, since the situation we find ourselves in, they've offered up more free material. Quite a lot of really good including I think Mines of Phandelver is now free, right?
I know it was. I think it was only free until May 1, but they might have extended
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So there you go. One of the best starter adventures ever written for any game, let alone D&D, is free right now. So
Yeah,
what do you have to lose?
and there are a bunch of other ways to get free or very drastically reduced price stuff or inexpensive stuff. Dungeons Masters Guild is a big one. That has a whole bunch of people. It's a weird hybrid between homebrew and published adventures. They're homebrew in that they aren't usually professional writers writing it. Some people do sell them there, but you can literally, or mostly anybody can get on and write that after a little bit of work.
Well,
Uh,
there are some professional writers who are writing on
yes,
Dungeon Masters Guild, and I don't mean professional RPG writers. I mean like published authors
yeah,
and video game writers are writing in D&D modules because guess what? That's what they like to do in their spare time
mm-hmm.
is play D&D, run D&D. Like that's something that they enjoy. So Matt Colville is publishing adventures that he's run. Um, who is he? Um, I'm I'm not tracking his name, but the guy who wrote Fear is writing D&D modules.
Not it means nothing to me. Sorry,
Yep.
but yeah,
Joe
there's
Joe Hill runs D&D
oh there
writes
we go.
D&D modules. Yeah, Stephen King's son writes a D&D modules. So
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff on there. You don't have to be a professional writer to submit to the DM's Guild, but there are professional writers doing that, and you can buy a whole bunch of stuff on there for pretty cheap prices.
mhm.
There's a lot of websites out there that do very similar things. A lot of free websites where it's just like, hey, here's what I wrote, have fun. Internet forums, I think, are still a thing. I don't know. I haven't
so
been online in
uh,
years, but
huge life hack here. If you talk to other people who run games, we have a whole lot of materials,
yeah,
and often we'll be fine with sharing materials with you, particularly the ones that are already set up for that. And there are quite a lot that I'm sitting on. I have a whole bunch of free, and free is used loosely because it's all under Creative Commons, but it is technically free.
yeah. Creative Commons is
Um,
fantastic. I love Creative Commons.
yeah,
It's a legal thing. It's great.
it is a legal framework. Yes,
Yeah.
that is true.
I just want to put that out. It's not like a website or something. Creative Commons is the ability
Yep.
to. It's like fair use almost. Uh, and we're not lawyers, so don't quote me on law stuff. But yeah, it's being able to. The internet's a wonderful thing. There's a whole bunch of resources out there for free stuff to be able to help you run this kind of stuff. If
So
you,
yeah, that's actually I guess that's one of the things that's great about playing D&D in this era is that everything that you probably want to do, someone else has already tackled, and there's a very good chance they put it out on the internet for free.
yeah, that's. I would publish my stuff for free, but I'm selfish and I like to, sleep on my things, my rules like I'm a dragon. So that's
Yep,
actually my
yep,
bed back there. That
yep.
where is it?
Yeah,
There we go.
he's both a dragon and a DM.
Yeah. I mean, Dragon Master, right? Anyway, yeah, that's gonna get weird. Uh, so yeah, the biggest thing that I can recommend if you don't have the money to go out and buy any of the big books, ask for help,
Hmm.
uh, and don't be afraid to get your feet wet in building. Just go out there and be like, hey, I know what should be in a fantasy town. It needs an inn, a blacksmith, a general store, and some peasants, I guess. Boom! Hey, there we go. It's at a crossroads. Have a party.
Hmm.
And you're cooking like that. That's all you need. Play off the tropes if you're doing your first homebrew campaign.
Yep.
You don't need to worry about making it the most. You don't need spelljammers. You don't need the most exciting thing in the world. Play it simple. Or figure out what it is that you're comfortable running, rules you're comfortable with, things you can keep straight in your mind,
This
and
is
put it together and
the
go.
the points of light design framework where you illuminate the parts of the world that you need to illuminate for your players to play through whatever the current adventure is. Um, if you're playing in a big shared world like Faerun,
Forgotten
you can
realms.
do that by setting the starting point of their adventure in a small town in Damara. There's not a whole lot over 5 editions of D&D written about Damara.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a central point in Faerun that just happens to not have a whole lot of written material. So You've said, here's the town of Slim. Slim is this town, and around Slim is a mine and a forest that is full of goblins, and everybody knows it's full of goblins.
Well, it's a
And
forest. Come on.
right, and a lake that is rumored to have a monster in it. And now your players have options.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basic stuff. Like, you don't need to make it a huge, wild, exciting, over this moon adventure. Start level one, build your way up. One of the big tips I have for new GMs when they are just getting started is, yes, level 5 and 6 are very exciting. Your players are going to be better than you at that point, and they're going to be doing things you have no idea what you're doing. If you level up organically the party, you as a GM will level up as they naturally progress and get more skills. You will naturally progress also and learn how to counter those skills or learn how to work with those skills into the overall story.
We're
There's a
building
reason why we
counters.
don't. Yeah, there's a reason why we don't all start driving, like Formula One cars. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't start driving in a Formula One car. It takes a while to build up to that. You don't start out on the biggest, most powerful engine you can find. You're starting out on probably the old like Toyota Corolla from before you were born, and if you're lucky, it'll get you to school, and then you slowly get better cars. Same
It,
thing here.
it,
Start at the lower
yeah,
levels and build up.
the new versions of D&D are actually built in a way that is not going to result in first level characters dying an absurd amount like it could in
Yeah,
older versions of D&D, where your wizard could actually literally be killed by a house cat.
if you want that, come play Dungeon Crawl Classics with me. If you don't
Hmm?
want that, don't do that. No, don't do that thing at all. Uh,
No.
but yeah, there's the current system of Dungeons and Dragons is very very forgiving to lower levels. Dying is hard in this game. You really got to make your GM work at it. And but
Mm,
if they want you dead, you'll be dead. Like that's
I I got to be honest with you, and for those of you that are, I don't know, watching along with our campaigns here on the Games Network, the Games Tavern Network, the the overall level of lethality in those games is relatively low for what D&D 5 is capable of, and that is no fault of Reed's. He's just been thwarted really, really hard. He got so close to killing one of us one time, and then he threw her a lifeboat for some reason. I don't understand his logic, but yeah, um, you know, I've seen D&D 5 games that are far, far, far more lethal. I don't think you were thwarted
no, no.
in the demonic bargaining in that particular instance, but I think that a couple of times you did end up getting thwarted because I cast Circle of Healing or something.
Yeah,
Um,
it's overall role playing games as a genre have become, I don't want to say softer or friendlier or anything like that, but they've become more user friendly. Uh, they're less of a meat grinder than they
so
used to be.
so this brings up the system mastery issue. There is no longer a high bar to entry
Yeah,
in D&D.
I love it.
The system mastery requirement is very low, as Mac continues to demonstrate by being a very effective wizard with about 0 minutes spent reading any of the D&D 5e
Those
materials.
books are just actually just empty bindings. I haven't read
Yeah,
anything.
he hasn't read any of them, um, eh, which is obviously an exaggeration. Mac has read at least half of the player's handbook, but he didn't have to sit down and study the entire thing to create a character that is capable of doing awesome stuff during the course of an adventure, and also not dying. The two
Yeah,
key things that you want in an adventuring hero is not dying and doing awesome stuff.
yeah. It used to be if you wanted to be a wizard in a role playing game, you basically had to have what is it, like a PhD from the University of Smartass. Like there's no, or basically be a wizard. Like
14-year-old boys around the world figured that shit out. I don't want to say that it's a PhD level course, but you needed to really be into
yeah,
studying to
you
figure out how to play a wizard.
you need to know how it all worked. It was not user friendly.
Yep.
Uh, it was delightful, and I loved it because then you could lord things over players or other people or I don't know girls who wouldn't say hi to you. But yeah, being a wizard is fantastic now. It's super easy.
Hmm.
You buy the wizard cards and you're like, oh, here are my skills. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yep. Yeah. No. Again, the bar to entry is pretty low, which I think is also true with the published adventures.
Hmm.
I happen to be a person that's old enough to own a lot of the TSR stuff, including
Hmm.
Keep on the Borderlands read. uh,
Just keep calling them out.
yeah. The the fun thing about that is that the old ones have a ton of really interesting stuff, including some awesome art, but they're very Byzantine.
Yeah.
Like, in order to understand what to do with them, you really, I don't want to say you need a PhD again because that's not true, but you need a master's degree in D&D.
Yeah,
Um,
and
it's
that's really true for any historical games. Historical is in from years past, not we're playing in the time of pirates or something. Any more aged system, an older system are you really got to know what the hell you're doing. They are not user friendly in the slightest. They're great
so
systems. I love them. I've played a couple like Rogue Trader games. Yeah, I like where game design's gone in the past 30 years. Uh,
mhm, mhm.
it's changed very nicely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that we should talk about is that and Reed just pointed out he has apparently read the new Keep on the Borderlands. I have not read. I know it exists. I just haven't read it. That the way that game design is approached, and especially in terms of these pre-made adventures, is much better.
Yeah.
Again, like the old pre-made adventures are like, um, here is things that you need to read directly to the group, and it's like, do I really need to read this directly to the group, or can I just do my thing and maybe they'll figure it out? And if they don't figure it out, then I read this directly to the group, stuff like that.
Well, there's still some of that, and I kind of actually like that.
Hmm.
A lot of games nowadays do have. It might not be read this
It's like
verbatim.
one paragraph, whereas the old Keep on the Borderlands started with a 4-page monologue.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
So,
I'm not gonna lie. That's why when I host Dungeons and Dragons systems or D&D nights and RPG nights, it's so I can soliloquize at my house guests.
mhm.
That's yeah. Check
They're
out
a
the chat
captive
here.
audience. They want to be there in
Yeah, it's
theory.
like I bribed you with cheese dip. Let's see. Okay, so I got some insults for me. Yes, yes, yes. Here we go. Old D&D books are a lot like old timey newspapers, tiny print and few pictures. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but the few pictures they had were
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna
so
go.
good.
There's a. I'm gonna completely butcher his name. There's a guy on our Discord right now who has like 1980s esque pictures, and they are just amazing, and I love them so much. Uh, let's see, artists and makers. His stuff. If you like the old Games Workshop stuff,
Oh, Spivna.
Spevna, yeah. Oh my gosh, his I love his art so much. It is so nice.
It is ripped right out of those old 1985 D&D, West End Games manuals where the art style is bold, and not because it necessarily has to be, but because that was the art direction.
Yeah,
You know, give me these hard black and white images because those are going to pop on the page because they didn't have color back then.
yeah, and his art's fantastic. I need to go buy some prints or something because I have empty beige walls. Uh, but yeah, so there's some really cool stuff in the old systems that you can look at. Yeah, let's see. There's a whole lot of things going on in the chat. You can be super fan. Oh, hey, check it out. Someone that's I'm also sharing a thing with because I'm also on the Games Tavern. Chat is able to do that. So check out our Discord, guys. You can come on and
Mhm.
check out all the cool stuff that we have going on there. Rich does bring up a good idea in that he thinks that modern module design has benefited by modern video game design, where instead of a thick manual, there's tutorial style play at the beginning to get you into it. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why for getting my partner into Dungeons and Dragons, I'm gonna run at least the first part of Lost Mines of Phandelver. Like, hey, check this
So,
out. This is what we're
so
running.
the other part of that is that the let's run your first adventure has been built into games now,
Oh yeah.
which is totally different from how it was when we were,
Mhm.
stupid kids playing stupid games. Um,
Yeah. It
I
used to
can't
be
remember
just
what it is, but
here's a pile of rules. You figure it out.
right, yeah, and then they would hand you what they called adventure seeds, which were those one sentence
Yeah.
ideas, like
A dragon was sighted over the mountain, or
brave Sir Robin encountered a dragon and bravely ran away. That's your one sentence, and you got to figure out where to go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, things. I know I've said this in the past, and I'm going to continue to say this now in pretty much every episode. This is the golden age of gaming, guys. Unless it gets even better from here. It might. But this is the greatest time so far to be learning to be getting into role play games, learning how to run them, learning how to play them.
Yeah, and there's tons and tons of free material out there, and otherwise very cheap material, especially for the value involved. I mean, even D&D, for what it is relatively cheap.
Yeah, it's for a night in or out with the guys. End of the day, buy this, and buy the three main books, four if you count Xanathar's, and you do all the homebrew you want. Your friends will bring you beer and food, and you have a year's worth of adventures before you even need to worry about it.
Yep.
Let's see. For developing adventures, what are the key books you need for Dungeons and Dragons?
You don't need anything. I'm be honest with you. You don't need any books. The Dungeon Master's Guide will tell you. I don't want to say everything that you need to know, because that's not true. Again, encounter design is something that you have to fail at to get good at.
Yeah,
guidelines.
Yeah, if what if I was going out today and if I had some soapbox I could stand on to tell people what stuff to buy to get into this hobby, which I do, it's this. Buy the PHB, the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster's Manual. You need those three. You can go with Xanathar's. I know a lot of people really, really like Xanathar's. It's not necessary. You really don't need to get started with that. The PHB gets you everything your players need to go to get their feet wet, to get the game playing. Xanathar's gives you a bunch of other stuff for helping you to build more characters, raising the bar, getting you, when you're bored of the standard tropic characters, Xanathar's helps you to go a little bit further. But it's absolutely not necessary. If you have a group that's not bored with the grumpy dwarf, the aloof elf, the ambidextrous human, and the hungry halfling, all right, cool. Yeah, let's do this. You guys can have a party in the Forgotten Realms and not even worry about it. If you want to expand beyond the core three, Dungeon Master's Guide, PHB, and Monster Manual, Xanathar's and Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide if you're going to be playing in the Sword Coast.
So, I do have one extraneous recommendation. If it's something that you think that you're going to end up doing a lot of the Kobold Press Guide to World Building, if you are a person that is going to take it upon yourself to build an entire game world for your players, that is an invaluable resource because they tell you what you absolutely need to have in place before you start playing, and what you probably should have in place just because it's going to come up pretty quick.
Yeah. So it does depend. If you want to build your own world, you got to do that. You got to have a couple extra things, or you got to keep meticulous notes and be really good at coming up with things on the fly. If you're okay playing in the Forgotten Realms, PHB, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual will get you through, assuming you are okay with breaking the canon, you're okay with breaking the established plot, you're okay with not worrying about that kind of thing, just knowing that there's these cities, knowing that this is the vague dynamics of the realm. You can have.
So one of the things I will point out, buy one of the extraneous settings. Eberron is out now. I find Eberron to be an excellent resource to steal material from for other D&D campaigns. I've played one Eberron campaign. I enjoyed it, but I also realized that the Eberron as a world has a lot of limitations in terms of.
This is my disgusted face. Like that's
right. What you can and can't include in Eberron, it's limiting.
Yeah.
But if you have Eberron's campaign guide and you decide, hey, I realize that this is Faerun, but we now have Warforged in Faerun. That is an awesome way to do world building, as long as you actually do some world building involved in how and why are the Warforged here. But then your players have another option. If they don't want to play a Dragonborn, but they do want to play a big meat shieldy kind of character, then all of a sudden they play Warforged. You know, those kinds of things, especially presenting options for your players without acceding to player extortion or player demand is an important one when you are doing the world building. When you are doing campaign planning, know what your players want. Ask them. Session 0 is a great time to ask them what do you want in this campaign. If somebody says, I want boats, congratulations, you're now playing a pirate campaign, but you got to ask everybody else what they want.
Yeah, that's key. One of the biggest things you can do is, as with anything else in life, communication will solve all of your problems.
Not all
have
of your problems.
Yonzam is agreeing with me. Forgotten Realms forever. It's always going to be Forgotten Realms in my heart. I don't care whatever stupid name it has now. Dark Sun, Eberron, Spelljammer. Josh.
Again, I have nothing against Forgotten Realms. It is never going to be my first choice, but it's also never going to be my last choice. It's that comfortable center.
Yeah, that's why I play there
for D&D. Yeah. But I mean, sometimes I just want to play Dark Sun, man.
Yeah, I've been interested in going into the Dark Sun world a little bit, but right now I'm on a wizard kick, and that's not a good idea. So
Wizards of the Coast, maybe you want to release a 5th edition Dark Sun campaign guide, just saying. Yeah, there is the Ravnica setting now, which I have no interest in playing in, Josh Lowry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, if we have Wizards of the Coast listening, sure, give us more information about Forgotten Realms. I don't care about Dark Sun. Give us more Forgotten Realms stuff. It's a whole planet. We're only listening about the Sword Coast. I want the rest of it.
Well, I mean, so that's the great thing is that when you own the older materials, you have things like the Adventurer's Guide to Mestica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a lot of it there, but the AD&D Guide to Dwarves is no longer canon. Like that changed 30 years ago.
No, Sun Dwarves or Gold Dwarves and Hill Dwarves.
They took concepts from it, but a lot of
right.
the actual, the mechanics and the established lore, they're gone.
You the mechanics are gone. A lot of Well, yeah. I mean,
not the mechanics, but like the actual the world that they built has changed, and
the setting has to change because it's progressed. This is a fun thing we should talk about.
We'll do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
I do have to get to bed at some time tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do have to get to bed at some point tonight. But the whole idea is if you're doing prepared adventures in a world that has a meta plot, that is a complicating factor. Because you don't want to do your adventures at a time.
Yeah, it is Hey, cat. It is problematic if you're trying to mesh everything up with that. If, however, you don't care, and this campaign is you tell your players everything you know about the world is wrong, shut up, and just what I say is gold, and there we go. We move on with our lives.
I have sent you to Chult pre-dinosaurs. Deal with it.
Yeah. So let's see. Is there anything else in the chat you guys want us to address on the homebrew versus published adventures front here? Not to, try and wrap everything up, but this is, I believe we've run out of talking points, and now it's just going to turn into us, complaining about how there's kids on our lawn and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. No. Get those kids off my lawn. Red box forever, etc., etc. Right? Is that what I'm supposed to say?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. So some hate based on the dinosaur comment. Yeah, probably. But yeah. So unless there's nothing else from the chat, we're going to just give them a second there to fill that out if there's anybody else that wants to chime in. I think we're about to go ahead and sign off on that. Oh! Biggest thing not biggest thing, but another thing I completely forgot about for published adventures is things that aren't in the book. Ancillary merchandise. If you want to play in, I think it's still in stores right now, if you want to play in Ravnica, because you really love Magic the Gathering, if you want to play in Ravnica, there's a whole bunch of Ravnica miniatures out there. If you want to play, I saw yesterday when I actually swung by my local game store to pick up a starter set. When I stopped by there are Dungeons of the Mad Mage settings, like miniature settings and stuff. So that's there's a whole bunch of miniatures out there, a whole bunch of bespoke cards, bespoke uh, mats for individual dungeons, uh, all this great stuff that you want to sort of help to bring in, bring your world to life. What you doing there with your
Reed,
phone?
Reed, Reed asked the most important question, which is if I could play any real adventure now in D&D, which one would I play? Reed, the answer is Pools of Radiance.
Any
So good luck.
any real adventure, like a real like a classic Dungeons and Dragons adventure, or
Mm-hmm.
like I want to do the Blitz. Like what do we what do we mean by real
Nope,
adventure there?
nope. We're going to Mithra Nor. It's going to be terrible. I mean, just for Reed, it's going to be awesome for us.
Just going through the jungle with a machete, and yeah, sure, let's do that. Why not?
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's the Pool of Radiance is doable on a set. I don't know what the Pool of Radiance is. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm forgetting something there.
yeah. He's right. Bring booze, 100%. It's
Setting.
high elf magic ruins the world. The adventure.
Oh, all right. I hate that. I hate high elves.
Right, exactly. It's the perfect adventure to force Adgern onto.
No, I hate elves.
Like I said, it's the perfect adventure to force Adgern onto. What do you mean I should have told him? Now he's anticipating his personal horror.
No, I'm just not. I'm just not gonna go. Like
No,
anything else in the chat? Like let's
not gonna go.
elves. All right, fine. We'll do this. Elves. My problems with elves is they're better than us in every single freaking way. They have better stats than us in every game ever. It's sort of mellowed out recently, but like in his any of the older fantasy settings, elves are better than humans in every single possible way, and it just
Hmm.
annoys me. And they didn't have the appropriate point cost differences, and they're running around with their pointy fucking ears and fucking elves.
Do you refer to elves as knife ears quietly when no one is
Pefs.
listening?
They're pefs.
Hefs?
Pointy eared fucks. Anyway,
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised there aren't more questions about this. Like, what is my personal favorite adventure to run? Which I've already answered
you
at the
have.
very
Yeah,
beginning
why,
of the
why would
show.
they ask you more on that?
Yeah.
Well, one of the
Um.
things that does actually bring up is being comfortable riffing in a setting is actually really important.
Mhm.
One of these days, I'm going to get everybody on board or trick everybody on board to playing some of the Warhammer 40,000 RPG because I can riff in that setting. I've spent
Mhm.
too much time playing that game and reading those books and just being a nerd to not do that, and I think that'd be a lot of fun. But I can
So
riff
those
in
of
that.
you who have, yeah, those of you who have watched our Star Wars one shot, I will tell you right now that I had one page of notes
Mhm.
for that. I had a basic synopsis of what I wanted to happen, and the key characters involved, and that was it. After that, it's my knowledge of Star Wars versus their knowledge of Star Wars. Um, and because they were somewhere that is not part of Star Wars lore in a major way, it was very easy for me to control the narrative.
Yeah, yeah, that's a solid way to do it. Have a world where you run, where you know how it all mechanically. Hey,
Pond is with me, 100%. Thank you, Pond. You are the best. Elves forever.
all right. So this has been the Games Tavern. Happy hour, guys. Bye. I actually don't want to end on a horrible note like that, but yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. You do this. I'm angry.
Yeah, Max Angry, we appreciate you guys tuning in to listen to us ramble about games. We would like you to tune in Wednesdays to watch The Velkin Weave. That's tomorrow, by the way. And Thursdays to watch our show, Whiskey, Magic, and Destruction, featuring Edgar and Firebeard, dwarf blower up of things. Maybe actually a wizard. Um, both of those start at 7 p.m. Eastern. And yes, yeah. Thank you, Reed. Both WMD and the Velkin Weave start at 7 p.m. Eastern. And yes, Mac is gone. He's gone to his unhappy place where he has to think about elves.
It's about 3 feet left of my camera, actually. All right, I'm back.
Yeah. We encourage you guys to reach out to us on the Discord.
Oh yeah,
Hopefully someone will put a link to our Discord
yeah.
in the chat.
Join us on Discord. We have a great community there, like I talked about. One of my favorite things about it, besides being able to talk nerd shop with everybody, is on the weekends. More often than not, now actually, we're running one shot, two shot, short mini campaigns. I've been sort of taking point on that for a while, but we would love to. We have people from the community joining in on us. We do a lot of cast and crew that are playing. Really, anybody that wants to get together and throw dice with us, we might have to turn people away. There's only so many people I can run a campaign for. But it's great to have more people joining in. And
Yep.
this is a great opportunity if you're looking for some people to play games with, even if it's not with the cast and crew. We have a Looking for Games channel. So you can come in and just say, hey, I'm trying to run a game for this. What do you guys got? And what?
We have two D&D games being run by non-cast and crew
Yep.
DMs, and I expect that at some point that number will rise as more people get involved. And I will tell you right now that I've been chatting with Reed. I may end up running a. I don't know if we're going to do it as a show. I think we're going to do it as a community thing, running some Star Wars long term in a drop-in kind of way. So no long-term commitment from anybody, but if you want to play Star Wars, every other Saturday.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and I just completely blindly remembered because somebody put it in the chat. We have a Patreon now. So.
Oh right, yeah.
And I believe
I
that
am
we're gonna
still
have.
writing.
Yeah.
Still writing letters. Reed, I owe you letters. Sorry.
Yeah, so you can get a whole bunch of great, fun behind the scenes kind of extra material there. All of the stuff you want to watch is going to be here. We're spinning up our YouTube channel, but we're building some extra bonus content for the player or for the patrons if they want to check us out and help support the shows. We'd love to have you guys swing by. We'd love to shout out to our patrons and
Yeah.
get to see all the cool background stuff. Pond Play saying it's super fun. Can vouch. Yeah.
Maybe at some point Reed will share some of his preparation materials.
I'm assuming it's just like empty, like a music box. You open it up and it's just.
We already know that it's just a notebook that only has one thing written in it.
Elves.
Sexy goblins. Just fine.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Just sexy goblin. Goblins. That's it. That's all the world building he's done.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for coming in, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for Falcon Weave. 7 p.m. We covered all that?
Yes, we did.
All right, cool. Well, thank you again so much for tuning in, guys. We hope to see you at all of our shows. We hope to see you on the Discord, and we would love to check you out with the Patreons. Patreons?
Patreon.
Yeah. See you on the Discord, guys. Bye.